When we think about CLIL, there is always, a name that comes into our minds, and that's David Marsh. And as you can see, David Marsh is not just a name we see written in books when we study things about CLIL. He's real. He's the father of CLIL, and an approach that has made many teachers change the way we were teaching. Not only a language, but many other subjects, but I think CLIL can be applied to anything. So he was with us in 2010 when we organized the first international conference on bilingual education, and today we have the honor to have him again. So do you want me to tell you something about you, or is that okay? Well, David Marsh has followed experience of task in over 40 countries. He has contributed to over 150 publications and has received 7 degrees and awards from England, Estonia, Finland, and Spain, and he's a founding figure involved with the launch of CLIL. In recent years, most of his work has involved designing and managing change processes in education, from early years learning to higher education. In 2017, Enseñando Inglés, la educación superior, la internalización y la práctica, was published by the Inter-American Organization for Higher Education, and his current work in progress is The Children of Cyberspace, towards a new understanding due for publication in 2018. Well, I'm sure today's talk, Shaping Future CLIL Horizons, will give us food for thought. So, David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's a little bit like a family gathering, a big Spanish family, because I recognize quite many people here. I don't know if you recognize me, because it was about 7 years ago when we last met. But yeah, you look pretty good. When the term CLIL was first decided upon, and it took about 2 years of European discussion to agree that it would be CLIL and not bilingual education and not all the other terms. But when it was being decided upon, people said, but you can't call an educational approach CLIL because it is the name of a tree in the Middle East. And this tree only grows in sort of the area of Palestine, Israel, and that sort of area. And it's used to make a cosmetic cream that keeps your skin really young. Now, looking at you 7 years down the road, I'm wondering which CLIL you've been involved with. But thank you for the introduction, and thank you everybody for coming here today. We have about 45 minutes together, and let's try to make this as productive as possible, a way to start what is clearly going to be a very exciting and a very important conference. It was 7 years. 7 is a special number, is it? Is 7 years a special number? Yeah? Why is it a special number? What's special about 7? 7. The 7 dwarfs. The 7. At the back there, wakey, stop looking at those phones. The 7 sins. Interesting, okay. 7 continents. What did you say? 7 what? 7 days, yeah, 7 days. What else is special about 7 over here?
7 year itch.
7 what?
7 year itch.
7 year itch. We're not going down that road today. That is the wrong conference. Today is the right conference. Okay. It's a special date. In 2010, when we first met, and we had a number of really important people here then, as we have now, it was still relatively early in terms of bringing together the language people and the subject people to deliver an educational experience together. It was kind of still an exploratory time. In Spain, a lot has happened. In Madrid, a lot has happened. In the other regions, a lot has happened in that time. In the rest of the world, this phenomenon of wanting to teach through another language which invariably is English but not also always, is growing very, very fast indeed. The demand for it is huge, but you are clearly extremely advanced now because of the experimentation that you've been working on so intensely. So I think when we look at the experts at this conference, I'm looking at them now because many of you have been the pioneers who have realized, was it a dream? No, not really. It was common sense, as in we could do better in how we teach children in primary and students in secondary, and if we integrate certain things, maybe we could do better education and better access to this language, which was clearly failing 10 or 15 years ago. So CLIL has continued to become a hot potato. I very much appreciate the gracious introduction, embarrassing as it was. I was thinking, who is that person that she's describing? Is it my brother or whatever? But I did push for the acronym CLIL to be adopted, that is true. As for being the father of CLIL, well, that's kind of complimentary, but it makes me feel a bit old, because I think fathers are usually quite old. Look at this one here, for example. But then you have to say to yourself, well, who is the mother of CLIL? And I think what is so important about CLIL, yeah, exactly. What is so important about CLIL is that it was the coming together of educators who had a passion for change and who thought that what they were doing anecdotally could work. The problem, even now, and the problem we anticipated 15 years ago, was that once this thing becomes popular, people would want to own it. Once something becomes real, people would want to actually take over the ownership of it. And that is actually happening as we speak. As we speak, there are entities out there which are trying to say, either own CLIL or put it into new clothes. Do you recognize this man? Anybody who recognizes this man gets a prize. Thank goodness nobody has responded. This man was working on developing something in Helsinki in 1992 at the same time that the Finland group were working with the Spanish groups and the groups in Holland, Germany, Italy to develop CLIL. He was there at the same time. He was living with his mother and his work was being done from the spare bedroom. And his name is Linus. Can you say that? Linus. Linus. Yeah, Linus Torvald. Linus Torvald invented Linux. Linux. Do you recognize that? Most of us almost certainly do. Linux was going to be called Freax. Linus Torvald did not want Linux to be called Linux. He wanted it to be called Freax. Why? Freax. Freax. Because it was free. Because the power of Linux, and every single one of us, our lives are affected by Linux. Our telephones, whether they're Apple, whether they're Samsungs, every time we go to the bank, that person is in your lives, and it is in our lives. And the power of Linux was that it was an open operating system, and the power of CLIL was always that it was an open operating system. But now there's one major organization that says we're going to reinvent CLIL. Okay? In fact, the conversation with me was, CLIL has become a corpse. What is a corpse in Spanish? A dead body. What is that in Spanish? Huh? Say again. Sounds really horrible, yeah? CLIL has become a corpse, and therefore we are going to reinvent it, and we're going to call it EMI. Can you say that? EMI. No, louder. Come on, 1, 2, 3. EMI. because that is a more modern expression to describe teaching content and language in the same way. What do you say about that? EMI. Does it sound modern? Can I see a hand, yeah? This means definitely modern, this means I'm not sure, and this means I'm using my telephone. So, can I see your hands now? EMI. Does it sound like it's more modern than CLIL? The most important word in CLIL is integrated. The second most important term is learning. English as the medium of instruction is an insult to all those teachers who are combining other languages with content around the world. It's an insult to those teachers who are combining English but who are fully aware of the Spanish or the other languages in the student's life. It's actually a very boring term, especially because it's about instruction and it's not about learning. It's not even about teaching. It's about instruction. What's the Spanish word for instruction? Such a simple language. Instrucción. And what's the Spanish word for learning? And what is this conference about? Instruction or learning? Okay, you're in the right place. Good. So, we've spent now quite a lot of effort building understanding of how to teach effectively in an additional language. Is it easy? No. Is it easier now than in 2010 for those of you who were in this very same room in 2010? Is it easier now? It's easier now. Why might it be easier now than in 2010? Because we have the experience. Resources, and the most important thing maybe is the network. Okay. Content and language integrated learning. What's the most important word in the acronym that I just said? It's the integrated. What is happening now in the dynamic and modern curricula of the world, and I'm going to take you to Finland in a short while, is that you're seeing integration happening on many different levels in education. Okay? So what you were doing 20 years ago actually was coming at the beginning of a rethinking about how to teach subjects, including languages, including English, in different ways. And this house of CLIL is growing very, very effectively alongside those other integrated things. We've changed our attitude towards language teaching. This comes from a language teaching book printed in 2017. Let's try it together and see how excited we get. But first, although clearly most of us here are very young, in our 20s, I want you to imagine you're 15 years old, okay? Can you imagine you're 15? Yeah, okay, it's really easy. It's very easy. Okay. I wish I were in London now. After me, 1, 2, 3. I wish I were in London now. I wish I hadn't done it. Try the other way around. I wish I hadn't done it. I wish I were in London now. This went wrong because you look really happy learning English in this way. Anyway, our understanding of teaching languages has changed from this very, very different approach which was traditional. Our understanding of how to teach content is changing very, very rapidly, and the dialogue between the English teachers and the content teachers is one of the most powerful reasons for validating why we're doing this. Because when you start talking to a teacher of geography, a teacher of mathematics, a teacher of chemistry, you realize that actually they're quite different animals. And when you put them together, they have a lot to learn from each other. So that is happening. We are learning more about developing competence learning than ever before. And competence learning, yes, I know when the European Commission it produced how many competences was it? The core competences, how many were there? 8? And then the Spanish complained and they said it must become 9 because there was nothing about cooking, I don't know, Spanish omelette or something. But those competences were quite boring when they were produced because they were very classic European Union. They were produced by a committee. But the intention was good. The intention was seriously, seriously good. And when again you look at modern curricula in a fast-changing world, the world that was reflected when the board was speaking just now, you will see that competence is not an empty word. It is actually a vital, vital word for us to consider when we're looking at education. The times have changed. They've changed even since 2010. In 2010, when I was here, and I remember this because I checked the PowerPoint yesterday before I came, in 2010, when we were here, we were talking about the changing digital youth. We were talking about how young people are changing so rapidly because of their exposure to mobile devices and the digital media. The changes over even the last 7 years have been changed. A doctor in the 1960s, does that look like the 1960s? Is that the 1960s? Because my assistant told me it was 1850, and I said, how old are you? That's not 1850, that's an electric motor. A doctor in the 1960s would have a very, very difficult time doing surgery in a modern operating centre as they would now. And the same thing applies very much to education because things are changing very, very rapidly. And as I'll say to you now and I'll say to you later, I do believe that those who are combining, who are integrating, are really at the cutting edge of educational understanding and educational skills. The 5 C's. Do you remember the 4 C's? And then it became the 5 C's because of our friends in the north of Spain. The 5 C's, the 5th C was competence. As a teacher training framework, that has remained very, very strong. Did any of you learn how to develop CLIL methodology through the 4 C's or the 5 C's model that was first invented by Doe Coyle in the United Kingdom? Do I have any of you used it or, yeah? Now I feel the audience has gone asleep. Okay, I'm going to come down here and terrorize. The 5 C's model, has it been useful in any of your lives for developing CLIL? Okay, well in that case, after this event, what I'd love to know is how do you actually develop teachers to do CLIL? Because there's one huge difference here, and that is the difference between saying, okay, I'm going to start teaching in English to this group of Spanish kids tomorrow through a monolingual method, or I'm going to start teaching in English to these Spanish kids tomorrow through a bilingual method. The term CLIL has got a little bit lost. It's become synonymous with teaching in English. Now anybody can teach in English if they know a bit of English and they have some students. But teaching through English using CLIL methodology is clearly an advanced state. And the 5 C's has been very, very good, as have all the publications, many of which are coming through people in this room. I can recognize some of you. They're not just wearing dark glasses, but there are actually textbook writers and producers in this room. Because the teachers, some of those textbook producers in this room have been developing very powerful forms of scaffolding. Scaffolding is an incredibly important word in education, isn't it? Yeah? What is that in Spanish? La. And what is it in French? Wrong location. The forms of scaffolding now to accelerate the successful learning of content through an additional language are the most important practical tool which we have in our hands. Shall we just try now? Oh, the lights have come on. Is that the end? Can you stand up? I know this is inconvenient and I apologize in advance, but please could you stand up? I live in Finland, which some people call Funland, and other people, particularly the British, make a lot of fun about because they always think that Finnish people are somehow strange and funny. In Finland, we are moving towards standing classrooms. In Finland, we are moving towards throwing out the chairs from the classrooms for certain lessons, particularly project-based lessons and particularly lessons taught through CLIL. We're getting the kids standing. Now let's just try a little bit of scaffolding here if we can. What does it say there? Acute abdominal pain. Where is, and the abdomen is like here, yeah? Is that right? Okay. And what does acute mean? Sharp. Strong. Severe. Prize. Favourite student in the front row. What else does acute mean? Severe and sudden. All right, excellent. Okay. So, one example of acute sudden abdominal pain is called appendicitis. Can you say that? 1, 2, 3. Appendicitis. Is appendicitis something fun to have? No. We're not going to ask how many of you have had appendicitis now. Where on the body will you feel the pain if you have acute appendicitis? Can you turn to the person next to you and point to the part of your body where you have the pain if you have acute appendicitis? Try it. Oh, this is great, okay. Right, well, as a matter of being good to the general public to make sure that you can help your children or your wives and husbands in the future, many of us are doing this. Well, maybe you've got extra special bodies, I don't know. The place where appendicitis pain comes is actually here down to... Right? Okay, right. Why did I just show you that? Can you sit down, please? We are hearing the same old from teachers who are teaching in an additional language. And we are in a situation where this thing is growing. It's growing right across Latin America. It's growing across Asia. And those teachers are about 20 years behind you, except they are more advanced in terms of technology often, because of certain reasons. But they are coming up with the same thing, such as, we can't teach the content deeply enough when we're teaching through this language, or we can't actually teach enough content because we're constrained by the language. When you look at some of the new research which is coming out, there is some very important research coming from Spain, which will be discussed here at this event. When you look at the power of scaffolding in another language or in the first language, you will find that deep learning can successfully be taught if only the scaffolding is there. And you'll also find that the most typical teacher-the-student relationship is one where the teacher talks and the students listen. If you have moved beyond that, and we're going to look in a minute at what really works in the CLIL classroom, then you're on an absolute winner. I think you are actually, as a professional group, we're at the leading edge of educational change. I think we're cross-cutting edges. And my work now, most of my work, doesn't involve CLIL. I haven't been working on CLIL since we met, actually since about 2010. I work with it, but I don't work on it, because most of my work is developing international schools in other countries and employing teachers from Spain, from those other countries, who teach through the medium of English. So it is CLIL, but it's through a kind of an indirect way. So let's talk now about, okay, if this thing is going to work, how do we know if it really works? What is it that is making this powerful scaffolding or this powerful CLIL practice work? And I want to take you to Finland, first of all, for a short tourist trip. Are you okay with that? We go to Finland? Are you tired of hearing about Finland? I am. You know, Finland, and some of you I know have actually been living there for some time. Finland's a funny place, okay? It's like a little club, you know? And it's a very small population, and you can test things there, which are very difficult to test in very big societies. But that doesn't mean that what happens in Finland is not relevant to you. Take the year 2085. What kinds of things may be happening in the year 2085? You have a choice of 3 answers. Do you want me to give you the choices? Are you okay? Are you listening? Yeah? All right. A, Britain will join the European Union. B, this association will have yet another conference meeting, as it probably will. And C, the youngsters who are entering school now are likely to retire. So in Finland, we're looking at the next X number of years, and we're saying what we teach these children now has got to be something that's going to carry them through, right through to 2085. And one of the things that has been developed in Finland for the last 15 years, okay, it's been tested for about 15 years, and now it has been legislated right across the whole curriculum, because what Finland said is, we have led the world on PISA and other big studies for about 10 years, but now we're beginning to slip, and they are. Finland is going down slowly on these big studies. It's really, really hard, but I have to admit it's happening. Yeah, it's happening. Why? Does anybody know? How is Spain doing? It's going up. Yeah? You see, Finland down, Spain up. Madrid is going up. Madrid is going up. I won't go into why Finland's going down or Spain's going up, but one of the things is that these international studies have become so important politically that huge amounts of money is being poured into making sure that results go up. Actually, that's a bad thing, because it means that schools in those countries are testing for the exam, they're not testing for the welfare of the children. PISA is now, in my view, out of date, and it's doing more damage than good. But at the time, it was good. Finland has said, no, we need to change, and we need to introduce something called phenomenon-based learning. Sorry about the word, it's a very difficult word to say. Can you try it? 1, 2, 3, phenomenon-based learning. Say that again. You're really good at that, aren't you? Phenomena-based learning is now legislated right across the curriculum, and it's relevant to CLIL. Let me explain why. What it means is that the teachers of the different subjects, chemistry, physics, English, geography, they need to teach certain transversals together. And the transversal is always about a real thing in the lives of the student, and it requires looking at this real thing from different perspectives. It is not just another project, it is actually a disciplined, deeply embedded in the logic of different areas of phenomenon. And if you take, for example, the healthy body, if you take a healthy body on a 13-year-old, okay, then the year of teaching may well look at the body from the point of view of chemistry, of biology, of physical exercise, and possibly of languages. So we have these transversals now that have actually been embedded and recognized in the curriculum. And when these phenomenon-based learning transversals are tested, they are not just tested for knowledge, they are also tested for, the students are tested for good, competence. Competencies. In other words, the testing is not just of what they know, it's what they can do. Phenomenon-based learning is perhaps the most exciting phenomenon happening not just in Finland, it's also in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, slightly different words, and it is a beautiful thing in terms of teaching through another language. What you're seeing now, happening in certain countries, is that if this is the first language, the Spanish, let's say second language in some regions, English, maths, physics, chemistry, biology, what you're getting is you're getting transversal projects which are being set up. Here is one on the sustainability and the ecological footprint, and that covers physics, chemistry, biology, physical education, geography, and history. Each of those subjects devotes a certain number of hours to the learning of this content, and these are very, very convenient for teaching through a second language such as English. So the push now is towards not just having a subject in English, it's towards having projects in English which are recognized across the curriculum. Now, effect. The effect size of something is what is the impact? What is the kind of the impact value of what you do? Okay. It's quite nerve-wracking standing here talking to you. Do I look nervous? But do I look a lot older? Because none of you recognize me. You know, that worries me from 2010. It's quite difficult to talk to an audience like you because you are educators. If you were engineers, it would be easy. If you were doctors, it would be quite easy, you know? But actually, teachers are really tough. It's a very tough crowd because you're kind of, you're very, very demanding. So we have to use certain techniques in order to try to keep your attention and to try to make this meaningful. Perhaps my walking around is part of that. Could that be part of? Okay. I'm sorry for it. I mean, sometimes it's very distracting, but sometimes it's also a way of keeping myself awake as well. But we use these techniques. And what I want to do is I want to show you some of the statistics which are coming from the big meta-studies. One of the most important of these in the English-speaking world is done through the University of Melbourne, which is in one of the finest countries in the world, which is Australia. Thank you very much. And but there are other studies done in the United States as well. So many of you will recognize the Melbourne study, which has been coordinated by a man called Hattie, yeah? John Hattie. But let's not talk about the research at the moment. Let's have a look at the effect size. An effect size of over 0.4 is very, very high, okay? There are research studies being set up now to look at good CLIL classrooms. There's a real need to say what is good CLIL and what is kind of not good CLIL. We know that there is a difference between now I speak in English and now I teach through English. We know that. But the question also is, how can I see the difference between good and not so good? You can see it in terms of the children's results at the end of the day, but you can also see it in terms of what happens in the classroom. The classroom environment, if the classroom environment is a happy, safe, comfortable environment, the effect size is very, very high at over 0.4. Here, this 0.4 is what can be expected. Anything over this is having a big impact on what happens, okay? So a happy classroom environment. When you walk into a classroom, how do you know if it's happy or not? Let's say there are no students there. You walk into a room. What is it that you see that makes you think, that's kind of nice? Interacting students. The body language, the colors, the so on and so on. One of the easiest ways to transform a learning environment actually can be done with very little money. It can be done with some creativity. I think throwing those chairs out of the classroom in Finland It's not for everything. And by the way, the students hate it. They complain so much if they don't have a chair to sit on. But actually, that is one of those small things that can improve the quality of teaching. But then let's go to other good examples of CLIL, where we'll see quite a lot of problem-solving exercises. Look at that, a huge 0.6. And we'll also see quite a lot of formative evaluation. What's the Spanish for formative evaluation? Not just the student being evaluated as they learn through the subject. It covers everything, including predicting how I'm going to perform, how I'm going to learn the content, predicting how my group is going to perform. That means actually judging the members of my own team. It actually can be a very, very powerful experience. Another one is the feedback which has been heavily researched recently, and it's been found that the vast majority of ways that teachers give feedback to students actually has a negative impact, and the teachers don't realize it, such as, thank you, that was a really good presentation. That is really empty feedback because it communicates nothing at all, and most self-respecting students will say, she's just saying that. Feedback, very, very important. Student-to-student talk, very, very important. I don't know how many of you have problems with the parents and the families. Do you sometimes get criticism from the families about when you're teaching through English? Has it ever happened in Madrid or in the other regions of Spain? Yeah? What kind of things do the parents complain about?
I think that because we are teaching in English, the children are going to learn less content.
They're learning less content because we're teaching in English. What else do the parents say?
I can't help them study.
I can't help them study because I don't know the language. What else do the parents say? Stop wasting time. Teach my kid. Don't do all this silly group work and everything like that. I've got, for 3 months, I have a group from Korea living in my town, sitting in my office actually. And they are working in one of the toughest educational environments you could imagine, because although they are extremely well paid, teachers in Korea, and they're highly respected, the demands made of them by the parents and the families are so huge that they cannot innovate at all. They cannot innovate. The slightest group work, and you've got people banging on the door and complaining that you're wasting time with my child. When you look at the power of what it means for a student to be able to talk to another student about the problem or the thing that I'm learning about, the impact power of that is huge compared to just the teacher trying to explain it. If you're talking about the top 10% of kids, leave it to the teacher. If you're talking about the 80% of the students in the class that you want to succeed, the power of student-to-student talk is huge. What I'm trying to say here is that when you look at this kind of research, such as, do the families, do the students really believe that I'm working in their best interest, such as, look at this huge, huge effect of self-reported grades, such as me showing that I believe that the students can succeed, you will see those actions, those behaviors, which have a very big positive impact when we're teaching, and especially when we're teaching through another language. And it is making us into evidence-based practitioners. Spain is being looked at, Spanish teachers are being looked at from outside in Europe with envy. Should the Germans and the French and the Swedes envy you? Yes. Why? Food, climate, social life, all those wonderful things about being in the Iberian Peninsula. They're envying you because they can see that the momentum of the movement towards teaching in another language is gaining ground. So they can see that the power of the network is actually strengthening the profile of those individuals in the network. And the most important thing for every one of us in this room is basically to know that what we're doing can be supported by evidence. that it can actually be seen to be supported by the evidence of good practice. And these issues, such as formative evaluations, such as the scaffolding, the feedback, this is the power of the classroom, which we know works very, very well. When you look at the whole world and you look at the move towards teaching through the medium of English, just English, you'll see that the changes forecast are absolutely huge. 2031 here and 2017 around here. About 8,700 schools now, going up to about 25,000 schools. These are international schools, or they are private schools, or they are public schools where some, or maybe half or more, of the teaching and learning is through the medium of English, and where the kids, the students, are either of the same language group or they're of a mixed language group. This whole phenomenon, use a word, is growing very, very fast indeed. And the fact that it's growing is that it's looking back and saying, we can't have business as usual. We can't teach in these world-class schools in the same way we used to teach, because we need to use these, what we call bilingual methods. And if you look at the bilingual methods, then you're looking at why the whole CLIL community came together in the first place to look at quality teaching and learning. Let's try something. Let's just try something now. Oxford University Press. Is there anybody from there in this room? Come on, admit it if you're from Oxford. Oh, guilty. All right. Oxford University Press. They put in your folder a big pad of paper, didn't they? Can you pull out one of those bits of paper? Yeah, just pull out one of those bits of paper from the Oxford University Press pad. It may be that Pearson gave you one as well, in which case Pearson very welcome, alongside all the other obviously generous sponsors of this event. But just take a piece of paper, yeah? You need one for 2 people. One of these for 2 people. And you need a pen. You need a piece of paper, one for 2 people, and a pen. Okay? Right. The research which I have seen recently, which is coming out, which has been coming out for some time, shows that collaborative learning, which is well scaffolded and well planned, achieves deeper results than a sort of superficial talking and talking. Now, what I want to do to reiterate that point is to ask those pairs to make a paper plane using this one piece of paper. Some of you will hate me for this, and the best thing is to sit with a primary school teacher because they are brilliant at this. But I want you to write a message on it. I want you to write a message to the association on it. Please be generous, be kind, be real, be polite. But I'd like you please make one paper plane and write a message on it to the Association of Bilingual Education. Are the instructions clear? Yes, okay, you have 2 minutes, let's go. Message. Okay, you done? Are we ready? Okay, just whilst quality learning takes time. And as teachers, one of the most important support that we need in introducing any innovation is the support of the management and the leadership, and it's the support of the families. And if the families or the management and leadership don't believe in what is being done, we're fighting a losing battle. And one of the powers of a network is to share and become stronger, especially when you bring in the research, which is reflected here, plus the publishing, which is reflected here. As a family of professionals, we become ever stronger. I can see this phenomenon of integration growing constantly all the time. I can see it in chemistry, in physics, in mathematics, and I can see it in language learning. And it was a very proud moment to be invited here 2010, as it is to be invited here today. And I sincerely hope that I kind of generated a spirit of how to get started with this conference. But what I'd like to do then, those of you who have the planes, that gentleman over there, he's the tester. He wants to know how far those planes will fly. So can you just stand up? Those who have the planes, please stand up. And we're going to throw, when I say three, we're going to throw those planes over towards the camera, okay? So stand up, wait, just wait.
¿Tu canto tiene la apertura? Y de apertura topo.
Okay, we're going to throw this
Un plano que se
way.
vea a él también.
Please don't hit the camera and don't hit the gentleman, because he's a very nice man. And see how those planes fly. Okay, on three. All right? 1, 2, 3. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That's it. Okay.
Can you hear me? So perhaps we've got 5 minutes for questions. I forgot to tell you, but in the back we have given you, there are some cards. So if you want to write any questions for David Marsh, you can give them to the...
Okay,
or just ask.
we have comments like this.
Any questions?
I want less students in my classes. Okay. More teaching resources. Okay. Bueno Congress. Okay. What do we got here? Seriously, if there are any questions or comments, or anybody would like to sing a song, please do it.
Si tenéis alguna pregunta, a mano alzada y os pasamos un micrófono. No se atreve nadie. No questions. Yes, there is a question here.
Yeah.
A microphone? No microphone? Okay, Santiago, so speak up.
David, thanks for your presentation. Question for you. I'm from the United States. And unlike Europe, the United States seems to be moving away from the concept that dual language instruction, bilingual education, multilingual instruction does work, and that is the way of the world. We are becoming isolationists. We're negating the power in being multilingual. Speak to that, if you will, please.
No jokes about the United States today. When we met in 2010 was when the big study on the impact of being able to think in more language came out. And we saw that there is a cognitive advantage to those people who switch languages, okay? And we saw that it's not a matter of having this much Spanish, this much English. It's a matter of using the Spanish and using the English, which has the powerful neurolinguistic cognitive impact. Ergo, those poor young people of the United States are being neglected by not being given the opportunity to develop another language in a meaningful way. Ergo, those immigrants in the United States are being neglected because the power of their first language is not being recognized. It's a real, real problem. One of the exciting projects that I'm working on at the moment is in New York State, where we've got high schools in a very depressed area, very depressed, which is now growing, or where you've got 16-year-olds who are illiterate. They are monolingual, they are born and bred in the USA, and they are basically illiterate. So, the reason it's come into my playing field is because can we use CLIL to actually enable these youngsters to accelerate their ability to read, write, and think in English? I think, it's not like the magic formula that works with everything, but it comes down to what do we value in life? And the multilingualism is surely one of the greatest of values. Thank you. That sets gentle question. I feel there's a question up here, I've got the force. I don't know whether it's Darth Vader or somebody up here. There is somebody who wants to say something. You can feel it. Come on. Why are we at this conference? Let me ask you a question. Why are you at this conference?
Well, I'm a student. I'm a student education here at the East University, and I think I have to. How can I say this? I think I have to. And not only study what I am studying at the university, but I want to expand my knowledge, and I think this is a way to do it. I don't know.
Whether you are a student in your 20s or whether you are a young person in your 50s or whether you're looking at a happy retirement in your 80s, changing the status quo can be very good, particularly if you know what you're doing. Yeah? And I think now, thanks to so much of the research being done in the regions of Spain and elsewhere, there's enough to show that to be a quality educator and to be able to say, this is what I would do if I were to be teaching through another language, is a real asset, and it's very much a career asset. So good luck with your career. And at the back, please.
Hi, David. I'm a kindergarten teacher. So I just want to ask you, if you can tell us what's your message to the Spanish system in terms of including preschool education in the CLIL approach, right? Because I don't know if you know anything about the Spanish preschool system. It's new to us, okay? Now we are into this world, into CLIL world, although we could teach them English before.
Yeah.
It's maybe first time when we can actually have someone to talk about it.
Well, one of my jobs is in Kazakhstan, which has 3 active languages, Russian, English, and Kazakh. And I've had the privilege of having some people from Spain working by themselves, but closely with me in Finland over the last couple of years. So I've learned quite a lot, but I'm a fairly slow learner, so I don't know the details. But I would say this. We used to be worried that the child should have a firm command of its first language before it is introduced to a second language. I know that the research, the hard research from the educational neuroscience shows that that is not the case. When a baby is born, it has the capacity for multiple languages, but it is our culture which is taking away that potential. Dance is a language, movement is a language. When the baby is born, it's primed for languages. The power, the advantage of early introduction to a second language is so big. Please, let's get it into the kindergartens and preschool as soon as possible. Well, I said something. clearly I said something right. Okay, there's one more, and then we're going to have a coffee break.
La última, the last one.
Does that include the third, the fourth, and maybe the fifth language? When would you...
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, I have been following in Spain, in the Basque Country, the way that things have been done there, and a lot of important work has been done there. I don't know. And actually, the work that I'm doing on the trilingual in Kazakhstan does not involve the early learning. So I have to admit, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say.
Thank you very much, David. So perhaps we'll be able to have you here again in 7 years, or perhaps before. Thank you very much.